morning, I'm Agustín Zepeda for NewZtar Intelligence. Here is your global briefing for Tuesday, June 16, 2026. A newly announced US-Iran agreement following recent military conflict is drawing fierce criticism from Israel, with officials calling it a betrayal. Lebanese civilians are returning home to assess damage, but questions remain about whether this constitutes a formal binding treaty. Israeli strikes continue in southern Lebanon despite ceasefire talks, and experts warn Iran's commitment to preserving Hezbollah could derail implementation entirely. But here is where the coverage diverges. American media frames global reaction as cautious relief, while Israeli outlets emphasize betrayal and abandonment. Chinese state media highlights 3,000 US domestic protests against the war, a detail largely absent from Western coverage. Middle Eastern sources report ongoing Israeli strikes in Lebanon contradicting the ceasefire narrative. A Russian frigate fired warning shots at a UK-registered yacht in international waters of the English Channel, marking a significant escalation in Russia-UK tensions. Britain is investigating the incident, which occurred as NATO forces operate daily in these same maritime spaces. The timing coincides with Ukrainian drone strikes on Moscow and UK defence budget debates. But here is where the coverage diverges. European outlets treat this as a major provocation and security threat, linking it to broader defence funding crises. Russian state media downplays the incident as routine enforcement action with no strategic context provided. American coverage remains minimal despite implications for US Navy transit rights. The Bank of Japan raised interest rates to 1%, the highest level in 31 years, sending the Nikkei above 70,000 for the first time. Meanwhile, the Swiss National Bank cut rates by 50 basis points, creating divergent monetary policy paths among major economies. These moves come as markets digest economic aftershocks from the Iran conflict, including sustained inflation in energy, fertilizer, and food prices. But here is where the coverage diverges. American and European media frame the Japanese hike as inflation-fighting determination, while Asian outlets emphasize risks to economic growth and export competitiveness. Chinese state media suggests the move reveals Western economic policy failures forcing Japan to protect the yen. SpaceX achieved a historic valuation milestone, briefly surpassing Microsoft to become one of the world's most valuable companies. The surge comes amid reports of a $60 billion acquisition of AI coding company Cursor. Separately, the Trump administration's crackdown on Anthropic is raising concerns among U.S. allies about American technology policy coordination. But here is where the coverage diverges. American media celebrates the SpaceX valuation as private sector innovation triumph, while Chinese state media questions the sustainability of space company valuations without government contracts. European outlets focus more on allied concerns about unpredictable U.S. technology regulation under Trump. The Trump administration is moving forward with dismantling key education department structures, fulfilling a long-standing conservative policy goal. The restructuring comes as the UK announces a social media ban for children under 16, creating divergent approaches to youth policy between allied nations. Implementation details remain unclear, but state education officials are preparing for significant federal funding changes. But here is where the coverage diverges. American conservative media frames this as long overdue bureaucracy elimination restoring local control, while liberal outlets warn of imminent disruption to special education and low-income student services. European media expresses confusion about U.S. education policy direction, while announcing their own youth protection measures. Federal authorities foiled an alleged attack plot, targeting a UFC event at the White House, though details about suspects and methods remain classified. The incident comes as Ukrainian drones struck Moscow, marking continued escalation in drone warfare. Separately, Pizza Hut sold for $2.7 billion as delivery competition pressures traditional restaurant chains. But here is where the coverage diverges. American outlets report the plot as foiled with minimal details due to classification, while Russian media suggests the threat was exaggerated to justify increased domestic surveillance. Chinese state media connects this to broader American social instability, while European sources question the unusual White House UFC event itself. That is your NewZtar Intelligence briefing for Tuesday, June 16, 2026. News in every angle, every morning. I'm Agustín Zepeda. Stay informed.